recognized.
I thank the chairman, and I thank the gentleman from Texas for his remarks. First, I will say to the gentleman from Kentucky, I share your concern with respect to FISA and the 702 surveillance reauthorization. Obviously, we serve on judiciary together, and so I look forward to working with you on that. And I appreciate your intellectual consistency because I don't know that I could agree with you more in terms of the way that you framed the question that's before us here, which really is not, we're not talking about the underlying substance of the issue at heart. Of course, I hear you, Mr. Roy, and I know your passion and the passion of your constituents in Texas and your passion for HR too. This is really about how the body functions. And, you know, I'm not an appropriator. You know, I serve with Mr. Roy and with Mr. Massey on the Judiciary Committee, so I have empathy for your circumstances with respect to the negotiations you've had with the appropriators about how do you make the case for inclusion of this policy language, of statutory changes in this process, and you're told no by the authorizers, you're told no by the appropriators. I get it. But this really is a bridge too far, because empowering the clerk in this way, essentially saying, okay, we're now going to have rules that move through this committee where we take up bills and we pass them, but they're never sent to the Senate unless other bills are signed by the president into law. You will create a level of gridlock, I think, in the legislative process that will become untenable. And in this instance, it's around, of course, the implications for a government shutdown, because the bill you're blocking the Senate from even looking at or considering is the bill to fund the Department of Homeland Security. And so clearly it wouldn't be realistic, and I suspect, not to put words in his mouth, but that my colleague from Texas would concede this as well, given his sense as to what might happen in the next 2 weeks. Clearly not realistic that the Senate will pass H.R. 2 in its entirety, will not change a word, as Mr. McGovern said, a comma, a period. The Democratic Senate is just going to take that bill, pass it, and that the president, who indicated he would veto that bill, is then going to sign it. And then at that point, the clerk downstairs will send the bill funding Homeland Security and FEMA and the other agencies within DHS to the Senate. That's just not plausible. And so I hear you in terms of what you're trying to achieve on the policy front. And I would just offer a word of caution, I guess, because as Mr. Massey said, it's not just that, to your point, that this is bad for your conference. Not great for our conference in the future either, right? Again, once a precedent is established in this committee and in the broader House, it ends up being leveraged and utilized the moment the majority comes in the next round. I've talked openly about my disagreements with respect to the way in which the motion to recommit was treated previously in prior Congresses. And obviously it has evolved into a tool that doesn't really even resemble what it used to be 10, 20, 30 years ago. I think this is going to become the new norm, where you're going to have rules passed by the majority and in an effort to convince 1 or 2 or 3 members to vote for the rule, you're going to have not a contingency, a conditioned precedent. You're going to tell the Senate, we're going to pass this bill, but you don't even get to look at it. We're not going to send this to you. I think the American people would be surprised to learn that we're sort of empowering an unelected clerk of the House in this way to sit on a bill and not send it to the United States Senate. What's the point of passing it if we're not going to send it to the Senate? I thought that was,
Would the gentleman,
of course, yeah, I yield to the gentleman.
I'll try to be brief, but I think you made a good point. My objection is not to the substance, and maybe I shouldn't have even talked about one provision of that bill. I was giving it as an example of something the Senate may want to legislate on, but you're 100% right that this is about the procedure and what's the best procedure for moving appropriations bills. This isn't about the crisis, which is real, not just for Texas, but for the whole country. And I appreciate my colleague's passion and dedication to solving this problem, and I agree with him on that. It's just not about that. My objection, which I think is Mr. Neguse's objection, is on the process, not the policy. I yield back.
And I yield back.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, the question's on the amendment. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. No.